Okay.
All right, we're ready to go. Welcome to the weekly roundup for August 25th, 2023. We're so excited to be here today. I'm kicking it off. Something that came up on my calls this week was one of my studio owners is really in that build the machine phase, but this is relevant, I think, whether you're new or a long-term studio owner, is what kind of support staff roles can you create, maybe something unique that either maybe fits a specific personality in your business that you want to keep them around and give them more to do. But also, the beauty of being the studio owner is that you can do whatever you want. You can think outside the box. But creating a role that would really help you as the owner, but also, yeah, it might be something unique. I wouldn't say that I had something super outside of the box, but one thing that we did that once we finally hired for this role, it was like earth shattering to me as a studio owner, was a facilities manager. And it was just sort of all the back end stuff that nobody really sees, but making the business run smoothly from like the viewpoint of like, if a toilet breaks or if there needs to be a little minor repair or who's going to go get the toilet paper, all of those things can eat up your time as an owner and prevent you from really focusing on that bigger vision. And so once we've sort of figured that out and worked it out and had the right person in place, it was just wonderful because, he was in charge of, being, they give you that window that the plumber or the electrician or whatever, like 4-hour window. And it's like, I didn't want to be that person to do that anymore. It wasn't serving me. It wasn't where my time should have been spent at that point. And so it was a great hire and it was just life-changing. So I'm interested to see if there are any things that you guys did that might be outside of the box, or even just that really, really allowed you, freed up your time and made it easier as a studio owner.
Yeah, so I've hired a number of studio assistants, and for the longest time at my own studio, we only had studio assistants, and this is still something that I recommend when I coach studios, to not be so hung up on hiring a manager, because a lot of studios feel super overwhelmed and they have like really long lists of tasks that they would really like to and need to delegate to someone. And then they're like, I'll just hire a manager and they can have everything. So I think we've talked about this before, that a much better way is sometimes to just hire one or several studio assistants, and they can then have different tasks, and they can be people who are already in your business, who is perhaps the teacher who is teaching, but they don't have as many classes as they like, and they kind of have spare time where they would really like to work. And then you can just give them those extra tasks depending on what suits them. I mean, this for me, it's been especially helpful with social media and marketing. So having someone who is a teacher who can do that also has the advantage of they are someone who know the practice intimately. They can write with some knowledge about the postures and about the practice and why we do what we do and all that. So yeah, but the thing of hiring a studio assistant rather than a manager, I think, is also a really great idea, because you don't come in with these like big expectations. You're now the manager. The salary should be something for a manager, and then you're going to do everything. Whereas, in fact, that person might be great at some things, but not at everything. So maybe having, 2 or even 3 part-time studio assistants, that can be, absolutely the solution. So actually, for my own studio, and I wasn't going to mention this even, but yesterday, so I'm running that remotely now, and I had a studio assistant. When I moved away from the UK, I promoted her to manager. This was only in January this year, because I felt like she's going to be more responsible for things now. So I think she's been working with me for a long time, and she's full-time. So I think this makes sense. Now that she's leaving, now I'm actually going back to doing the part-time thing, because it just makes so much sense. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that.
I think sometimes we get hung up on titles, like working, with Josh a lot on the on-sites this year, and we talk about the org chart. It's like, forget about what the title is, and even forget about who's in that role right now. It's like, what are the roles that you need in your business? And oftentimes we have the CEO level, which is typically the owner. And then we talk about maybe there's an integrator. And the integrator is oftentimes, when a studio is newer, it's the same. It's the owner is the integrator. But you might get to a like Vicky has. She has that person as the integrator. And then they're responsible for then some people underneath them. And to Vicky's point too, and Carol, is look to your own teachers and your own resources. If there's a job that that needs to be filled internally. I had one of my young teachers. She was looking for some extra hours, and so I paid her to clean. I did not do energy exchange, karma, whatever you want to call them. I didn't do that. I did not have that. She cleaned the studio. I paid her an hourly wage. And when she was done, she taught in the morning. She'd clock out, she'd clock in my body, and she would clean the studio. And then eventually I had, front desk staff as well that was doing the cleaning, but gave her extra hours. I was paying someone to do it anyway. I'd rather pay her. Right. And then the other position I created, the same thing to Carol's point, is I've talked about this before, is I realized that, dealing with my teachers was like the bane of my existence. So I hired a teacher. One of my teachers was, her professional background was early childhood development. She loved curriculum. She was a good teacher. She was good with people. Not that I'm not, but she was way more patient than I am. Anyway, she was good at that. And so I called her the teacher liaison. And she was the one that dealt with the teachers. She did their reviews. She checked in with them. She gave them feedback. She would report to me once a week. We would just check in. How's it going? And then she handled if there were issues with subs or anything like that. She took care of all of that. And it was great because, like Carol said, with her facilities person, I was like, why didn't I do this before? So really looking at what are some of the things that are taking you away from building that bigger vision that you could task off and have somebody within your team. And sometimes it's like, and I've talked about this before too, is sometimes, I know I was guilty of this, doing stuff that I'd like to do to avoid the things I didn't want to do. Right. So sometimes you have to look at, do I really need to be doing this thing, this task, even though I really loved it? It's like, no, I need to have someone do that so that I can work on the things that are going to drive the bigger vision of the business. And I've always said this before, I loved working the front desk. That was my favorite thing to do in the studio. And that was really hard for me to give up. And I needed to give it up so that I could do other things. So sometimes we have to look at, are we doing it because we really like it? And there are other things we should be doing that we're not. So kind of a little self-assessment there, I think sometimes can be really helpful too. And just finding those, shoring up where your strengths are, and then looking to where you need to lean into your strengths and building that larger vision.
I think it's often teaching. I think that's a very common one. It's like, but that my classes are really popular. I get more people coming to my classes. So I need to teach a lot.
Yeah, I wasn't that way.
No, but I think it's a common problem.
Yeah. Again, I think it's interesting. I have a client who had to have some surgery. Actually, two clients. One broke her wrist, and she can't be in the hot room, period. Not even teaching that, and then I have another client that had to have a surgical procedure, so can't be teaching for a while. And both of them are like, it's going okay. That's the other thing too. Sometimes you think you're the only, the teacher, but the reality is get the teachers and train up your teachers so that it's not reliant on you to teach all those classes. And, maybe sometimes there's ego involved. I've got to teach. The teachers come from they should be coming to the studio for the experience. And this just goes to, I think, any one individual, kind of leading into what I was going to talk about a little today, is, do you really want to have it be a cult of personality? Right? If you have a cult of personality, then the monkeys may be running the zoo and the teacher's dictating, and then you're in this position, and this has come up a couple of times on calls this week, where the owner feels that they're held captive, they're hostage, because they're fearful to make changes, because the popular teacher, they don't want to teach this, they don't want to teach this time. It's like they're dictating the terms of when they want to do things, and then making it very clear when they're unhappy, which is a disservice to everybody. So it's like you build the schedule and you have the teachers teach the classes that fit the schedule, not the other way around. At least that's how I think about it. What do you guys, I mean, anything, suggestions there?
Yeah,
How you handle that?
I'm still not tired of a teacher that's so popular that they are, you know, you cannot fire them. But that's not irreplaceable. Like no one's irreplaceable. They shouldn't be. So no, if it's causing trouble, often when they leave, things just become better. So, but it's a scary thought though, especially when someone is really popular and they seem to they bring so many people in, or that their classes bring so many people in, that you think, if we don't have them, what do we have? What do we got left? But
That's
yeah,
a scary position to be in. I mean, if that's
yeah,
the
it is.
position, then I would say, you really need to look at yourself. Have you been doing your job? If your business is reliant upon one or two teachers, and if they left you, then what are you doing to develop the rest of your staff? And then that you got to look at what can I do to develop my staff and make sure that I have all my teachers are quality teachers, right? I mean, there's always that teacher that is just like has that, I don't know, that's a little special something extra. I'm sure we all can think of one of our favorite teachers from way back. They just have that something that's just that little bit, I don't know, whatever it is that people seek out. And there's lots of other teachers that are just as good, that perhaps might serve you better on your schedule than the ego-driven prima donnas. And if that's what you want to have at your studio, because Josh has talked about that, then fine, make them the talent, and that's all they do. But then have very, very specific guidelines and policies in place to support that. Right? What do you guys think about that? I mean, you can do it that way, as long as you have the support staff.
What's coming up for me is also thinking like, what is your messaging? Is it around, this is the teacher that everyone, or are you promoting like the healing benefits of your classes and why you should come and take this class,
Like that.
and what kind of healing or whatever, however you're positioning it that way, and not necessarily like messaging. Of course, you want to promote your teachers. Of course, you want to give them props and highlight them and their, how great they are. But
And
at the basic level, like you're talking about, healing and wellness and, and it should be about the classes, I think, and the focus there. And I think time and time again, it is always scary when you think this is our most popular teacher. And what happens if they get rid of them? Time and time again, we show it's usually a happier place to be. And it's okay. Like it's going to end up okay and probably better, like you guys said.
Yeah, typically I think it always ends up being better. You just made me think, when you're talking about that, the healing benefits, things like that, kind of segues into what I was going to bring up too, is with all the work we've been doing with and the reiterated coaching program, looking at everybody's websites and how they're laid out and the content, and looking at class descriptions, right? And so what do your class descriptions say? And are they clear? Like with one client, it's like, this class was called open. I'm like, what's open? And he was like, well, it's open levels. I said, okay, open levels of what? I mean, they knew what it meant, but I'm looking at your schedule and I'm like, I'm a yoga teacher. I'm like, what the heck is an open class?
I think I think it's common in the vinyasa world, maybe.
Yeah,
But
and
it's
it
like
was
open
vinyasa.
level. Yeah.
Open level. Yeah, I think that is. But I said, well, then why not call it vinyasa flow? And then in the description say open to all levels. because they also teach like a power flow, which is a little, and I said, well, okay, for the more, this class builds upon the vinyasa, so if you do have a class that has a little bit more experience, like in the Bikram world, there is the advanced series, then that's what you say in the description. So looking at your class description, and are you talking about what problem this solves, what the healing benefits, who's it open to, how does it work, so that your descriptions are congruent with what your product is. And is it, if the classes aren't doing well, is it a product problem? A product problem meaning is what your product says, not what people are getting. Is that again, is there incongruency there? And also going to, is if you have a vinyasa flow class, is one teacher's really vigorous and one isn't? Is, I've been talking with a lot of clients in the vinyasa space about developing an arc for a class, right? Having, so that within, if you come to a slow flow vinyasa class, whatever it is on your schedule, people get a similar experience, as opposed to one teacher does it this way, one teacher does it this way, and then it's like, well, it's mixed. The message is mixed. Vicky.
So I just looked up our recommended formula for class descriptions, and it's this. The hook is the problem. Actually, this is a sales opportunity, so we've got to hook people in. This is how we start. The problem, and then how the class solves that problem, the positive result, and who is this class for, /purpose/intensity. And then the call to action is book this class now. So that's how we should be talking about the problem that the class solves. It's not easy. It's actually very tricky when you sit down to write it.
Yeah.
But yes, so definitely the intensity and level is in there. And I would say if you have a heated studio or hot studio, then it's good to even have the specific temperature. So IHP and Bikram style are different temperatures, and you might be running like a warm yin. So to put the approximate temperature in there, if we don't put it in there, people will ask about it, because they want to know exactly what does this hot and warm, what does it actually mean?
Yeah, because the hot to some, it's everybody's definition of hot and warm and cold is different. I think most people know Bikram is the hottest. People used to ask me, well, how hot is it? And this was my standard answer. Hot, so hot, damn hot, we're going to fry eggs on your stomach hot. And that's what everyone would do. People would laugh, because oftentimes if people were nervous about the heat, right, I would say that, and they would just stand and they would get those looks, so they would smile and they would laugh, and I say, you're going to be fine. I found that was a really good way to kind of, if people were anxious about something, about the heat, I would just say that. It was fun. I had fun doing it too. Anyway, what else is going on? Vicky, you were talking about an interesting article that you read.
Yeah, I was reading something in a blog, but then I was just kind of skimming it, because first I saw the title, and it was "Goodbye Front Desk. 34% of studios now operate without one, giving a whole new meaning to customer experience." This was Mariana Tech's blog. So I thought, that's terrible. That's just plain wrong. We don't want that. We're always encouraging studios to have front desk staff, and this like human to human contact being so important, especially like in a small sort of one location type studio. But then I read a little bit more from the blog, and it really wasn't as bad as I first thought. So their solution was just that sign-ins and sort of check-ins really. So check-ins for them to be automated. You can do that, but it doesn't have to be for everyone. So as long as it's not for everybody, then yes, I don't think it's a bad thing. But the people that we want to talk to, those are the ones that need to come to the front desk. So we don't want them whizzing through. So sure, self check-in, it's fine. And if you're a big busy studio, that can really free up some space and save people time and no stressful queuing. So as long as it's just for members, so people who are already on a membership or they already have a 10-pack, as long as you can set it up so it's just them that can do the self check-in, and anyone who's brand new or who's on an intro that you need to speak to, they should be made to go to the front desk and give their name, because that's the touch point that we want to keep. So
yeah, I would say we did at the on-site part of the first visit flow is a lot of it is, okay, Carol, next time you come to class, part of that education and the educate step when we talk about the first visit flow, when we do the sales trainings, is in the educate step is with the new folks, telling them, Carol, next time you come to class, you're going to check in and you tell them. Some studios want them to go to the iPad. That's fine if that's, or like to Vicky's point, next time you come to class, just come to the front desk and check in at the front desk. We just want to check in and see how things are going for you. Right. So in that educate step, you can tell people, the new people, how do you want them to check in? Also, how do you want them to sign up for class? Obviously, we want people to sign. So it's like, make sure, to book your next class, you can download our app or whatever check-in app, whether it's Walla or MindBody, or you have your own app, having a QR code there that they can scan to get it. So again, that's all part of that first visit flow, is letting people know how to check in so that you can then focus, to Vicky's point, focus on the folks that you need to have those conversations with. Because we talk a lot about this in the on-sites too, is if Vicky comes in all the time and she's in your class and she's been coming forever, if there's a day that you're not able to speak to her personally, Vicky it's not going to be a deal. But Carol is on her intro. I've only seen her once, and I want to make sure I have a conversation with her. So, prioritizing, that's what we talk about, this opportunities list, is prioritizing the conversations you want to have at the front desk with people so that everybody has a good experience, not just the members, right? We forget that the average membership is 4 to 6 months. We all know those people that we see all the time, but what about those people that stop coming because maybe we don't see them, and maybe just checking in with people gets them to stay a little bit longer, right?
Yeah, I think it's really only necessary if the studio is so busy that you have like a queuing situation at the front desk. So unless you have that, why do it?
Why do what? I'm sorry.
Why do it? Why do a self check-in?
Oh, why do a self check-in? Just, I think having a self check, I don't know, that's a good question. I only started doing self check-in towards in 2019 when things started to get super busy all the time. Just because I didn't have a very big area, but we also had, I had, my whole one wall of I was in a strip mall, so it was windows. So I was checking people in as they were coming across the parking lot, because I could see people and I would be just checking people in as they came in. I think sometimes having a self check-in there for the times when your studio is busy and just having people trained to do that can be helpful. But to Vicky's point, if it's a small studio and you don't have a huge capacity, you might not need self check-in. I know. Post below. What is your check-in? Vicky's got to go to class.
Yeah, I've got to go do some yoga. So
I
will see you next week. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Speaking of sign-in process, we were talking a little bit about this. How much time should you allow between classes?
This just came up recently on our Roundup, right? So, yeah, I guess you have a client that's changing it up. Huh?
Yes, it's like it's been coming up recently. It's interesting how these things happen and kind of like they just percolate up into your consciousness. Vicky talked about it on the when we had the free open house webinar, the things for the open house webinar, and we talked about on the webinar making sure if you're doing a free yoga weekend that you have enough time between your classes so that you have those conversations with everybody and it doesn't become this like 3-ring circus act in the studio, particularly if you don't have a lot of space, right? And so what is enough time? And you know, typically I've seen like 15 minutes, 30 minutes between classes. And firstly, I think 15 minutes is just not enough time. You know, I did it one time at my studio, and I had 36 people coming out, 30 something people coming in, a tiny little lobby. And it was horrible. There just wasn't enough physical space. And also, if you think about the customer satisfaction and client and engagement, conversation with a client yesterday, and she was saying there's been some friction between, you know, that she does Bikram, traditional 90-minute Bikram, and then IHP. So she has a Bikram class, and the Bikram people are getting chill and they're in their savasana, and then you've got the IHP people come in and nip and wanted to get in the room, and then they have to clean, and then the teachers, and there's all this, and she's like, I said, you know, what's the solution? I said, more time between class. And she said, that's what I'm thinking. So now she's going to have an hour between classes. We talked about this, but you talked about this not too long ago, right, Carol?
Yeah, we did. I mean, so there's so many things that are coming up, you know, when you have a people in Shavasana at the end of class, and like the next teacher's trying to get in and maybe turn on their music. And yes, customer satisfaction in that sense is a big piece of it. And other people trying to just get in the door. And so that's a big piece, making sure your staff has enough time to prep the room and everything, but also that having those touch points, you know, before and after class. And I was thinking, as we were talking about the self sign-in, when we had a 30-minute window, we needed the self sign-in to some degree on certain classes for sure. Once we went to an hour between classes, we didn't need self check-in. It's like there was, you know, this nice, it's only 20 minutes, but it's only the people coming in. Yeah. You don't have to also deal with the people going out at the same time. And so I'm sort of putting it all together, like that really made a huge difference, that it wasn't like everyone kind of like passing in and out. And so now I kind of love the sign-in process the way it is, because before we had people start to take off their shoes in the front area. I know that's very normal for a lot of studios, but we didn't do it for a really long time. But it's just enough time for them to pause. And I, on the iPad, can say, oh, hey, Terry, got you checked in. You know, how's your day? We have a little quick conversation and they go back. So it feels very, I think from a customer perspective, it's kind of nice. Like they just walk in, you know, if I don't know you, then I would ask your name, but otherwise it's just a hi, hello. They don't have to do anything. They just walk in, and, you know, it's like they're taken care of as soon as they walk in.
Well, and I think it's a more of a curated experience. I think it's more of a boutique fitness. I think it differentiates from the box gyms or the big franchise models, where they're trying to jam as many classes as they can, as many people. When I had I'm thinking back to my brief stint last year with Spenda, it's like there were times 15 minutes, and it was hard. It was really hard as a teacher too, to like barely be able to take your breath and then go in and teach another class right away. And it was just like, there's no way you can have a conversation with the new people, which is what they wanted us to do. There just wasn't physically enough time to do that. So I think part of it is like, what is the experience that you want? It could be a differentiator for you. And then particularly if you have like a nice lobby area, which, you know, we've been to some studios that have a lovely lobby area, it might encourage people to sit down and mingle a little bit more and talk a little bit more and have that sense of community, instead of it being like a cattle call. When I think back to some days in my studio, it was like, I'll never forget, it was January, it was 2019. And it was just like every class was full with wait lists. It was just like exploded. And I had a full Bikram class. I had 2 back-to-back Bikram, only half an hour. I never even thought about doing an hour. Now I would totally do it different. And I just remember I was at the front desk. We got the people coming out. The hallway that went back to because I had 2 unisex bathrooms, 2 unisex bathrooms, 2 unisex showers, and a men's and women's changing room. So people would take their showers, wrap their towel around them, and then go down the hall to either the men or the women's changing room. And it was just a narrow hallway. People were like backed up against the wall like this because they were backing up, waiting to get in the showers. People were walking in the hallway, getting down into the changing rooms. The changing rooms were just, I'm looking at this going, I was having this moment of panic that, oh my gosh, how sustainable is this? And this is when I started thinking about maybe I need to expand or maybe have a second location. And thank goodness my coach talked me down off the ledge off of that at that point, because I actually went and looked at some space and I was ready to, and we're like, whoa, cowgirl, let's calm down. Let's look at the numbers. And of course it was January. Right. So one of the things I did is I just like, oh, okay, let's put a couple more classes on the schedule to ease some of that crowding. And then when it tapered back off, it was fine. And realized that there was still a lot of space on my schedule. And then, of course, this thing called the pandemic happened. So thank goodness I decided not to expand and not to go into a second location at that point. I am happy to say the woman who bought my studio has now opened a second location. So I think that is just pretty cool. Right. She now has 2 locations and that's what she wanted. So I was really happy when I found out that she had opened a second location in the neighboring community. So anyway, so it's just like thinking about it from what is the experience you want your clients to have? And it kind of all goes back to you're in charge of it. Right. Not the teachers.
Right.
Not the, okay, so the schedule's not, you want to optimize the schedule for what's going to make the most sense for your community, for your clients. Not the teacher. If the teacher can't teach at that time and that's the optimal time, then you find a teacher who can teach that time. It's like you set the schedule that works best for your business, for the experience that you want, then the team's either on board or not. I mean, at least that, I mean, what do you guys think? Post below. You know, who sets the schedule, you or the teachers?
I think as an owner, sometimes we need a definite mind shift because I already hear a lot of, newer studio owners, it's almost like they feel like the teachers are doing them a favor. And I find that really interesting because, it's a mutually beneficial relationship because maybe they could go teach it in the park somewhere, but as a studio, you have usually a lot more, visibility in the community, and so you're giving them a place to teach, and you're the owner, and you need to do the things that are going to make your business succeed. Otherwise, a lot of them wouldn't have a place to teach.
Yeah,
so,
it is an interesting dynamic, particularly in yoga, that we seem to think that they're doing us a favor. It's a job. It's a business.
Yeah.
Whether they're employees or independent contractors, the reality is it's a business, it's a job. How they are classified is neither here nor there. You're providing a service, and they're helping to fulfill that service. It's not like they're doing you a favor. And we seem to I don't know why. I mean, I certainly fell into that at times. It's like, and sometimes I think it's fear. It's like, well, if they don't, then I'm going to end up teaching all these classes.
Yeah.
Which I remember a great piece of advice I got years and years ago. And it from an early on mentor was, however many classes you have on your schedule, be prepared to teach them all. And so if you're going to have a schedule of 36 classes, but you better make sure you've got teachers to teach them, because otherwise what happens if so I always kind of kept that in my mind.
It's sparking a memory that I know of a friend who owns a studio, and they had a mentor that kind of, okay, worst case scenario, if it bottoms out, what, if something happens, how would you handle this situation? And of course you need to be prepared. Right. Of course we
learned that.
We know we need to be prepared for things like that. You adjust, you're flexible, you get through it. And hopefully it's for a short period of time. But I think, and the flip side of that coin also with teachers that are saying, I only want to teach here and I only want to teach this time. It's like, I can go to them and say, look, I want to make you happy, and these are the classes that are available. and I need these. Can you, can we work together? Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily have to be a really rigid and harsh conversation, but let's be real. Like,
Right.
you can't always teach between 2 and 4 o'clock every day. Like, there aren't a ton of classes necessarily. Like, you want to wake up late and then go, party on in the evenings. Like, it's just, I need classes filled.
Yeah.
So let's talk
The
about
classes
it.
that fit the schedule. There was,
Yeah.
it made me think there was it was a legend in the beak room world. I think he still has a studio, but his name is Joel, and he was teaching 32 classes a week. Beak room, OG, 90-minute, 30. I'm like, the most I ever taught in a week was, let's see, when I was in Hong Kong, we were teaching 15 a week. 6 days, 2 days, we taught 3 classes in a row. That was intense.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a lot. That's
That
a lot.
was really a lot. It was a lot of time in the hot room. But yeah. So anyway, so there you have it. How are you? Who runs the zoo? Are you the zookeeper? Remember, it is a business. You are responsible. You're in charge. You get to make the rules and then get the team to support them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you need help with getting their buy-in, like, talk to a coach, and we have some strategies for that.
Yeah, definitely. Also, any of the things we talked about in regards to class descriptions, optimizing your website, all of those things, book a call, if you don't have a coach right now, book a free coaching call with any one of the team, and we'd be happy to help you. Our Leads to Member program is just knocking it out of the ballpark. And it's really, we look at all aspects of your business. And also keep in mind, we do have 2 upcoming events on next month. Can you believe it? It's almost September. We have on the 19th, our webinar next month is one of our newest YC partners going to be talking about their white label training app, online training that you can brand to your business. And they've got a great program. Josh did the math on this. And if you just get 2 people to sign up, you've paid for the annual fee for the company. So join us for that. And then on Friday, October 6th, we're going to have a virtual summit, a mini summit, an all-day virtual summit with the entire YC team, and talking about your 2024 marketing calendar. We did this 4 hours last year, and we're just taking it up a notch this year. And the people who attended it, I mean, I know Vicki was on it and several of my clients, they were just like, they said it was one of the best things they did. They had their entire marketing calendar planned out for 2024. So we're doing that on Friday the 6th. It's a little mini taste of what we do in a much grander scale at the actual summit in Mexico, the annual Visionary Summit. That's just a small slice of what we do there. So if you're wondering what the summit's all about, that's a good place to start to see that's the type of work what we do. So those are a couple of things that are coming up. I do think there still are some spots left for the summit. So if you're interested in that, reach out to anybody on the team. And yeah, I guess go do some yoga, right?
That's right. That's right.
And we'll see you well, actually, you won't see me next Friday. I am taking the day. I'm going away for the long weekend. And because it's Labor Day next weekend. So anyway, have a great weekend. Go do some yoga. Carol, always great to see you. And we'll see you guys all in the YC. Bye.
Bye.